Guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about medical coding, job shadowing, internships, and externships. Does it really help with experience? If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay, guys. So let's discuss internships and externships and job shadowing when it comes to medical coding. So you may have heard about internships and externships. Externships are typically with the school. Like if a person is going through a associate's degree program or a bachelor's degree program, an externship is part of their degree program. And that is getting that real world exposure. The externship is really all about getting them that like into the environment so they can kind of see what's going on. It's not really meant to get work on hands-on practice, but it is meant to get you that introduction into the field that you're going into, or that you're studying rather. And so a lot of times people will ask me, well, my school gave me this externship, will that help with my job search? What it does with the job search is it gives you connections, because you're meeting that health information manager, or you're meeting somebody else like a coding supervisor who can potentially connect you with other people who may need assistance or who may be hiring if they're not hiring. So a lot of times there's a legal agreement that is in place, because you have to have a legal agreement when you are looking at or getting any kind of exposure to health information or medical records, because these are people's private information. And the person that is, showing you around can't exactly hide everything. So you're going to see some things. And for that, there has to be a legal agreement and between the school and, of course, the hospital or the doctor's office. So that's what you have to know about the externship. Internships, sometimes they're a little bit longer, and sometimes they offer pay. It really all depends. An internship can also be part of somebody's program. For if they're in a trade program like medical coding, sometimes they do have those. I don't know any of these schools personally that do that, but I have heard some people say that their school offered an internship and it was a paid internship. So in that case, internships tend to be a little bit longer. Sometimes you're working for no pay and sometimes you are working for pay. I will say this before I go any further about what I'm about to say. When it comes to getting an internship or getting an externship, working for free, or job shadowing. First of all, you are never supposed to work for free. The externships and the internships are something different, because that is with the school. That's part of your program. That's part of you learning. That's the learning process. I am talking to those who are insisting on, who will let me work for free just so that I can get some experience onto my resume so that I can get hired somewhere. You are about to enter a multi-billion-dollar industry, okay? The medical field is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Did you hear me? I said billion, okay? Multi-billion-dollar industry, which means they can pay you. And all of the transferable skills, everything that you're bringing on with your knowledge about coding needs to be paid for. No one should be working for free. No one should be saying, hey, I'll work for free, because again, you have a skill that should be paid. There will be a time in the beginning where you may feel like you're not making very much money, but in the beginning of your career as a medical coder, it is okay to move around. You do not have to stay in the first job that you get for the whole year. Okay, if you apply there, you're able to get in, you get started, and it's not really giving you all of the exposure to different specialties and things. You're kind of doing the same thing and you're kind of getting bored after 6 months. It is okay to start applying at other places, because now you have experience to put onto your resume. That is one of the hardest parts about getting in, of course, is the experience part. How are you supposed to get hired if everybody wants experience? They really want you to be knowledgeable. And the problem is there's a lot of these schools that just cattle herd people through really fast. And so they are not teaching them how to critically think. They're teaching them, a lot of these schools are teaching them how to pass the tests. And people are not studying. And so when they come to my channel, of course, it sounds foreign because I'm telling y'all got to study 20 hours per week. I give all of the workbooks that I recommend in the description box below, so that way you can go get those workbooks. I recommend certain coding manuals, and those are also in the description box below as well. And I will still get the question, where? Guys, when you get into this field is about you being able to do your own research. I'm literally telling you it's in the description box. That's where it is, okay? So I recommend studying 20 hours per week because that's what's going to make you knowledgeable. Because when you are out there and you're trying to find your first job and you're trying to sing this song of trying to work for free, which you should not, you should never, okay? But when you're out there and you're applying and you finally get somebody's attention because you have a really good resume put together because you watched my video about resume tips, my several videos about that, and you go and they give you an assessment test. They know you have no experience. But if they can give you an assessment test and you can pass that, that's going to get you a lot further to finding your first job than somebody who is just out there saying that they'll work for free because they need somebody to show them and train them hands-on. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. When you get hired on as a medical coder, they say, okay, you're coming in with the certification. This means that you're knowledgeable. I don't have to sit here and train you. And it's not the employer's responsibility to train new medical coders because that's what they went to school for. That's what the student went to school for. So with that said, you don't have to have an internship. You don't have to have an externship in order to find your first job. It is about preparing yourself, making sure that you've studied, and making sure that you're still practicing with the codes and looking up codes in the book. Because even though, yes, at the workplace, you will probably have an encoder, there are some times where you may not. I have talked to many people who have booked sessions with me and have said, we don't have an encoder. I have to look things up on the internet. I said, you need to get yourself some books. And so, but that being said, internships and externships are not the make or break of whether you are going to be able to get a job or not. Because I'll hear that as well, as people will say, well, I wasn't selected for an internship at my school, so I was never able to get a job. That's stinking thinking, right? Because again, if you have a certification, if you have gone through a program and you have passed your certification exam, you have the CCS, the CCA, the CCSP, or the CPCA, right? You have any one of these, right? And you're out there, you are in control of being able to find your own job. You can find a job. If I was able to find a job with no prior background in medical at all, I delivered phone books, I was a bartender, I was a housekeeper, I did all of these blue-collar jobs so far away from the medical field, yet I was able to get in. Why? Because I registered at a temp agency, right? They have temporary agencies for medical professionals, and you can Google that in your area. Please don't ask me because I'm not familiar with every place. And you can let your fingers to the walk-in and Google and be able to look up temporary agencies for medical professionals. Don't put temporary agencies for medical coders because you will not find anything, okay? And that's not what I said. Temporary agencies for medical professionals. And you will find a bunch of them that specialize in medical. That's when you can go and put your resume on file with them. And before you say, that's not what I want a full-time job. I was the same way. I was the same way. And I said the same exact thing when the principal of my school said that he has a friend with a temp agency, and he was telling me about his idea of like, okay, go with her so that way, she can help find you a job. The goal of the temporary agency is to find people jobs. If you are working, they are making money, and they are about making money. So that is another set of eyes that is going to help you to find a job, with or without an externship or internship, okay? And you having the knowledge already coming in that you can decently pass a test and show that you are preparing yourself and show that you're ready. Because I hear a lot of people, and what I hear a lot of is just a lot of talking. People are real good at talking. Like, oh, I'm just so passionate and I just love medical coding. Really? Let me ask you some basic questions then. So I ask these basic questions, cannot answer a single one of those questions. And these are basic questions about modifiers, about, sequencing, and about all these things. Just off the top of my head, can't even. Because they're like, oh, well, are you studying at all? Because if you were, these are very simple, basic questions. You should be able to answer them. I know that the idea is very exciting. And a lot of people are so, they get all pumped up about it. But it takes time to get in. You need to be strategic, and you need to start paying attention to, okay, I have a skill that is worthy of pay. I do not have to subject myself to working for free. And if I do not get an internship, if I do not get an externship because somebody did not select me or it was not part of my program, it is okay. I can still get a job anyway. You don't need it. And that's why a lot of people, as soon as they don't get the internship or the externship, they're immediately wanting to throw in the towel. Why? Why do you want to throw in the towel? Because you're looking for an excuse to give up? Absolutely not. You make your resume look good. It's on one page. It can go back 10 or 15 years. That's it. And if you tell me, well, Blue, I've been a stay-at-home mom, and I've been a wife, and I've done a side hustle and things like that. I haven't really done anything. Let's see, you've been raising kids, you've been running a household, and not only that, you have a small business. Let's start looking and reframing the way that we have been spending our time if you haven't been working in a traditional job. If you've done any of those things, those are what needs to be on there. You've been a caretaker all this time. That's not without work, okay? You have to pay attention to those things. If you've been a volunteer at the church, it's the same thing. Even if you've been one of the prayer warriors who sits there and prays for people, and that is your calling, that is what you do for the church, is that you're part of a prayer group. We have that at my church, and you're part of a prayer group, and that's what you do. Do you know that you hear about people's situations? Sometimes you don't hear the whole story, but you hear some pretty private things, right? Are you out there willy-nilly just telling everybody's business about Sister Susan or Brother Joe? No, you're not. You're keeping that confidential, or you should be, right? But you should be saying, hey, that you protected confidential information, because it's the truth. You're not out here sharing everybody's private information. You are praying for them. You are, keeping good thoughts for them, and you're keeping their information safe. Again, we need to reframe how we look at things. Job shadowing is another term that a lot of people throw around too. Oh, I want a job shadow. Does anybody know of anybody I can job shadow? I see this a lot on LinkedIn. Okay, first of all, who is going to let you come in and look over their shoulder while they're working? HIPAA violation. You can't do that. That's why the schools always have legal agreements, because that way it's all ironed out. There's no HIPAA violation there. But if you're saying, hey, I want to just job shadow, and you expect somebody to just let you in and look over your shoulder, no, that does not happen. This information has to be protected. They don't know you. They don't know who you know. They don't know if you know somebody that went to that clinic and that you could just be looking around back there. Okay? So don't set yourself up for heartache if you think that you've been asking for people to let you job shadow for free and no one's letting you. No one's letting you because it's a HIPAA violation. So again, what we need to do is practice our coding. Don't worry about the internship. Don't worry about the externship. And if you did get an externship, you can obviously put that on your resume, but it's 40 hours, somewhere like 20 hours. So is it really worth putting it onto your resume? It really depends, because a lot of times people don't do anything. Sometimes they do, though. It really all depends on that particular facility. So if you really did something, like say for example, they give you some sample records, with the information redacted, and then you were still able to code and you practiced that, and then somebody looked over your work and kind of gave you feedback, that's something that's good, right? Because that's something that can go on your resume. Okay, because this says that you've already been exposed to this type of coding, and that's what they need to see. If you did an internship, right, and you got maybe paid a few dollars, and you did like some work for whatever company for a little while, and this was part of your school, your trade school program, that's something that you can put onto your resume. They don't need to know how much money you made or anything like that. But if you got feedback because of stuff that you coded or things like that, that's something that can be added to your resume, certainly. But again, it's not the end of the world if you don't have it. Okay, I want you guys to get out of that mindset, because there's too many people with that false mindset of, well, I can't get a job because I didn't get the internship, I didn't get the externship that I wanted. That's just, again, it's putting that defeated energy out, and you don't need to have that. I scratch my head. You don't need to have that. Okay, you need to have a positive mindset. You need to get out there and be strategic. Every time you put out a resume someplace, you need to be changing the job title on your resume and your cover letter, because yes, you do need a cover letter. And that cover letter better not be a regurgitation of what you have on your resume, and I know a lot of you do it. So get all of that garbage off of there, and you talk on that cover letter should be no more than 3 paragraphs, a beginning, a middle, and an end, in your signature, right? And you talk about yourself and the soft skills that you can bring, because a lot of people waste valuable real estate on their resume because they say, oh, I have communication and I'm organized and I'm a team player. The 3 words that if I see that, it's an immediate, I'm not calling those people. Everybody is good at communication, everybody's organized, and everybody's a team player when they're looking for a job. Have you seen one person who says, I'm not a team player? No. These are these buzzwords, filler words that people put in there. Give something specific about you. What were you trained in the school? For my people that think that you can't list on your skill set ICD-10-CM, CPT, HCPCS, ICD-10-PCS, if you have that, because you have not done that yet in the real world. Really? So all of that knowledge that you have, and the fact that you had to use it for your certification exam, means nothing to you? These employers do not know you from Adam or Eve. You need to tell them what you learned in the school, and that goes on your skills list. Okay, it doesn't need to be feathered out to be all these things. And if you put on there ICD-10-CM, CPT, HCPCS, ICD-10-PCS, and you put medical coding, I'm gonna look at you. Why? Because what do you think ICD-10-CM, CPT, HCPCS, ICD-10-PCS is? Medical coding. So that's the thing. When you're thinking about what are you putting out there, that may be the problem for some of you who insist on commenting and putting the emoji that I don't like, the one with the big sad eyes. It looks like it wants to cry, and it looks upset. No, don't do that. Don't do that, because again, you're putting out that energy. Somebody commented the other night, well, I put out 300 resumes and I just want somebody to give me a chance. And I bet you money, that a lot of those 300 resumes were not tailored to the place that they were applying to, like the specific job. It was not tailored. I bet you. So again, we need to think about that. All of this job shadowing talk, all of the internship, externship talk, and that's the reason why you can't get hired. No, you can't get hired because, especially if you've been watching my videos and you haven't been putting a lot of my advice into action, that's why. It's because you're trying to get into an industry that you know nothing about. And here you have somebody in front of you who is a 17-year veteran. I have been at this for 17 years. 17 years ago, I got my certification. I got my CCA, okay? And I would still hold on to it today if AHIMA would let me, but they don't. But that's okay. I have my CCSP and my CCS, and that's all right. But the thing that you have to understand is this. When you're getting into this industry, there may be some people who will give you a hand up and help you, but do not expect it. We need to be more independent, and we need to, get ourselves more resilient so that way we can be out there, we can handle the rejections, which I know are very hard. I know they are very hard. It is not easy to constantly be rejected, but it is just literally a small portion of time. I went through this same thing like you with the rejections. I went through this for 2 whole months before I finally went back to the school like my mom had suggested, so that I could meet with the principal and him, that he can tell me about going to the temp agency, which I never would have thought of, because my first reaction was the same as yours. I don't want a temp job. I want a real job. But we need experience and we need exposure. And if it takes working a few days at a place or a contract, because sometimes these temp agencies do get contracts. Sometimes they do. In my hometown, the place that I had got my first coding job, they were actually, they had gotten that order for the 90 days that they wanted 3 people, and I was one of the 3. But then they also won a coding contract. So they started to do that. So they were doing that more and more. And so it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, which is fantastic for them and great for me at the time, because I was able to go on to my second job and get the experience that helped me to land my forever home job. Okay? So sometimes things are not going to work like you think they will. And sometimes you just need to go with what somebody is telling you, because I'm not sitting here trying to sell you credentials or a program or any of those things. And before anybody says anything, because I always have somebody, but Blue, yes, I have Patreon, I have tutoring, I have professional coaching, I have resumes, yes. But that's not the purpose of the show, is it? I did talk about the resumes, but what did I talk about? The free tips that I have on my channel. And if you don't want to look through all the videos, you can just Google Medical Coding with Blue resume tips, and you'll see it right there. So again, the information is there and available to you. You need to be proactive and start to look the stuff up on your own, because once you start doing that, yes, it's going to be an exciting ride, because there's going to be a lot of things that you'll discover. Okay. And I also give tips for the interview process. You know, when you're interviewing either in person, or even I did a video when you are doing virtual interviews. Okay. So there's a lot of information out there that's helpful, but getting out of that pity party mentality of, oh, because I didn't get an internship, oh, because I didn't get an externship, oh, because I didn't get to job shadow. None of that means anything until you get into the real world and you start working for your own facility that you're working at, okay? At least that's just my advice anyway. So with that said, guys, come on, we need to toughen up. We do. And if this message is not for you, it's for somebody. Because trust me, I always get really good feedback from people when I bring out a message like this, because sometimes people fall into that pity party and then they start to like, oh, it's because of this. No, you're going about it the wrong way. We need to look at it from a different point of view. And we need to think about our transferable skills, because again, that's what's also going to help supplement your knowledge in coding. What other supplemental skills do you have? If you worked in retail, if you worked in fast food, obviously you're really good at diffusing situations, right? Because customers or people who go to a restaurant can be quite the challenge. But that's something that you can highlight on your skills. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.